Welcome to the online tutorial on Flexcom's model view. My name is Angus Connolly and I'm the product manager for our Flexcom software. In order to illustrate the model view in Flexcom, I've opened one of the standard examples. It's a multi-line flexible riser system. It's example C2 in the current example set. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the model view a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make it full screen. I can do that by clicking on the top bar and then dragging it anywhere I want. And if I push it in, I can dock it there in the middle. So now it's much bigger, and I'll just close the file view as well to have maximum size on it. The first thing to learn about the model view is actually how to control the view. So if you click the right hand mouse button and hold it down, you can then move the model around on screen. So I'm just moving it from right to left. So you click with the right button and move up and down or any way you see. So that changes where the position of the viewpoint in space. The second thing to learn is how to actually rotate the view. So let's say if I want to rotate the view about the arch, the best thing to do is to move the arch right to the center of screen. You'll see a red dot there. I'll drop the arch right over the red dot, and then with the left hand button I click on the arch and then I just gradually move it around from side to side. So that's quite easy to do once you get used to it. The controls can take a little bit of time to get used to. The scroll wheel on the mouse is very useful for zooming in and out. Very quick. So you've got the right mouse button to move, you've got the left button to pan, so you can move around an object, and you've got the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Those are the three main commands. Up here on top you've got some very standard views. So the isometric view is quite nice because it gives you a good overview of the model, and it's in perspective also. The next couple of views are standard elevations. That's a plan view looking right down on top, side elevation, which we just were in, and then an end elevation and the opposite side as well, both in the XZ plane. If you want to look at, you can also do these movements that I showed you using these up and down, these arrow keys. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard as well, but I find the mouse quite easy to use. Where these rotations can become useful is if you want to actually do a specific rotation. So if I want to rotate by about 30 degrees, you can go in fixed increments. So that's much more controlled than rotating using the mouse. And you can also, you can get right in there, so you can rotate it like 1 degree at a time, and you can really get in there in slow detail. So they're quite useful if you need to have very specific camera positions that you want to set up. Let's go back to the elevation view again. I'm just going to walk you through some of the tools in the model view. Hopefully you'll find these things useful. I'll zoom in a little bit. This measuring tape tool is really very handy. So I can click on and drag so I can see how big the arch is. I can see how long the tethers are. So 34 meters. Very handy tool. So just remember to turn it off when you're finished, because obviously then it stays active while that button is activated. It stays active and it precludes you from using other controls like moving around the screen and so on. Zoom all is quite handy, so I can go back to initial position, or you can zoom in, zoom out. Again, I prefer to use the mouse rather than using these, but you can easily do the same thing as well. Saved camera positions are something that's really useful. So let's say I want to get a nice view of that arch. Let me just zoom in on the arch itself there. Just momentarily, I'll turn off that water surface I'm not really interested in for the moment. So that's quite a nice view of, let's say, the arch. So I could save this as, let's say, arch view, save, and then I've got it stored in my set of camera positions. So if I want to just go to something arbitrary like the perspective view, I can easily click on this camera icon and go back and restore the arch view, which takes me immediately back there, which is very handy. And you can set up a library of those views if there's specific aspects of the model that you want to look at in detail. You can also look at different points in the model simultaneously. So let's maybe go for 3 panes rather than 1. So I could look at maybe the full model here as an isometric. I might look at an elevation here. Maybe in this view I could look at my saved arch view. So that's quite useful for when you play the simulation. Then you can watch different areas moving simultaneously. Finally, just on the top menu bar there, you can use this copy button, which copies whatever view you're using, so you can paste that into a report as well, which is quite useful. So maybe I can just go now to some of the controls on the lower half, which is the actual playback. So this is a dynamic simulation, so let me just switch back to one view again because it's maybe a little bit easier, so you guys have full screen view on it. This is a dynamic simulation, so I can just press the play button and it animates over time. I'll just switch back on the water surface as well. And you can set the playback speed, so here we can see the vessel is responding and moving in response to wave loading. You can see the arch is moving as well. There's a continuous loop here, so I can just press that. That means it plays continuously. Here you can see the playback times that it runs for 122 seconds, so it's probably like a 10-second or 12-second wave ran for 10 periods or something like that. On the bottom here, you've got a series of options that you can change while you're viewing the model. So you can turn on the node numbers. It's quite a complex model, so there's a lot of nodes in there. The node numbers are quite useful in that it shows you contact. So as the lines are hitting the seabed, the nodes that are in contact with the seabed are highlighted with a red circle, and nodes which are not in contact just have the node number displayed. Similarly, for element numbers, node labels are kind of how you would have defined the model initially, using lines presumably. So you can see some of the labels there which come from the line definition initially. So you've got tether 1 and tether 2 base, lower catenary start for the different lines and so on. So those are node labels. You can turn on boundary conditions just to show you where the constraints are in the model. These are indicated using these green circles, so that the lines are fixed to the seabed, the tether is fixed. There's probably some vessel boundary conditions up at the top, which we might be able to see if we hide the vessel. So if we hide panels, we can just take away the vessel. Perspective is usually a good option to have on because it just gives a nice feel to the model. So I'll just switch the vessel back on again. I'll turn off the boundary conditions and put the vessel back in. Contact surfaces you can equally hide as well. There's a series of contact surfaces used for the arch. Again, if we zoom in there, and I maybe turn on the node numbers again so you can see that. So the contact nodes in with the arch are highlighted again in by red circles. So there's quite a lot of options there, but I think you can just play around yourselves with all those options. Are very self-explanatory really. The only ones you kind of watch out for there is the estimated wave profile. If you have a random C analysis, this is just a regular wave simulation. If you had a random C, because if you've got like 100 different harmonics in the simulation, then this can slow down the animation a little bit. So it's good to have an estimated wave profile displayed, which speeds up the animation just in case there's any graphical issues, but there usually isn't anyway. Another nice feature is the ability to vary the background. Just turn off those node numbers. So I prefer this daytime because it's got a nice skybox, which looks really. I think it looks pretty. It's nice for reports and stuff. There are other options, so you can. There's a sunset, it's just like a darker evening shot, and then some constant ones. I find that if you're looking at a side-on view and you really want to get in some detail, I find the white background very clear. You can examine things in detail. Others obviously prefer different colors. Some guys like a black background, which is good as well. Gives a good contrast between the background and what you're looking at on screen. If I wanted to exaggerate the thickness of these lines, I can do so, but it's not really an issue for this model. But sometimes for, like say, top tension risers, which are very long and very slim, they're very slender, it's hard to see them on screen, so you can exaggerate the thickness if you wanted to. Obviously that looks crazy there for the arch, but for the tethers it kind of makes sense if you want to look in more detail. Set that back to 1. I remember, if you remember correctly before, I had maybe a couple of panes opened. So when I use this first button here, this controls the active pane, and the second button, which is the very same commands, but these control all the panes. So if I wanted to change the background on all the panes, I'd set it here. Otherwise I'll just working the active pane. I tend to just use one pane anyway. Let's go back to the perspective view. Again, there's a scaling on displacements here, which is not particularly helpful for this type of model, but again for top tension riser models where the lateral displacement is very, very small, it can actually help sometimes to exaggerate that a little bit. I'll try it here just to see how it looks, but so you can see I've kind of exaggerating the displacement of the model. It doesn't make any sense for this flexible system, but it might do for a top tension riser, as I mentioned. Hiding element sets is really useful. So on this model I've got a lot of different lines. I'll just turn off that wave again for the moment so we can see more clearly. I've got 5 different risers. I've got tethers, I've got the arch. I can hide everything and then I can start showing selected sets in it. So let's say I want to just show the tethers. So I can isolate the tethers in the model. Why would I want to do that? Because if it's a very complex model, or if maybe I want to look at, say, the tension in the tethers, this takes me on nicely to this element set coloring. I'll just show all the elements again. Just go to an elevation view. Coloring the model is really something that's very useful in Flexcom. So let's color this in terms of effective tension. At the moment there, all the lines look the same color. Because there's probably some element with high tension in it. So this is where the hiding of elements comes into play. So let's just look at, see if we can pick out 1 or 2 of these risers. Quite a lot. So we've just highlighted so we've taken out any rigid elements. We're just looking at the tension in the risers. But again, I'll just hide the vessel so you can see a little bit more clearly. So obviously it's got low tension on the seabed. Tensions increase up towards the arch and obviously up at the vessel hang-off point where the tensions are greatest. If I just look at say curvature, it might be an easy one to look at as well. So let's go back here, and the area where the curvatures are highest, we just zoom right in on top of that arch. You can see where the maximum curvature and bending is occurring in the rise. It's just over the arch. That's why everything else looks like it's got relatively low curvature. But you can obviously control the extents of any of these graphs as well by just switching from automatic ranges to manual, and then you type in what the values you want, or the range or extents for the stress contouring. So stress contouring is really useful in Flexcom. So then it's just the final thing to show on this screen is just that you can search for particular nodes or elements in the model. So you can I'll just say where, but it is quite obvious from this one because we know the model quite well. So where is the base of the tether? I could find that node label, and then when I just zoom out, because I've actually just hidden the tether, it's not available. So there you can see I searched for the location of the model called tether base, and now it's highlighted. Okay, so that's to briefly recap, the most important things to remember particularly for new users of the model view is that just the commands for zooming, you can use the mouse scroll wheel to zoom, use the right hand mouse button to move things around on screen, and if you want to rotate, if you want to look at some object in detail, let's say I want to look at the arch, I should move the arch right to the center of the screen, just where that red dot is, and then I can rotate. And when I want to rotate, I should place the mouse cursor as close to the center of the screen as I can, and then just gradually move from left to right. So it's very easy once you get used to it. The problem some users have is that they click away from the center of the screen, and then it's more difficult to control. Very difficult to control. So that red dot in the middle of the screen should be like an anchor point for you. So let's just go back to the standard view. If I want to look at, say, the base of, let's say, just underneath the arch there, I'll move it to the right of the center of the screen. I can zoom in, I can move it right to the center, and then I start the rotation by clicking the mouse in the middle of the screen and gently moving the mouse from side to side. That just lets me pan around very smoothly. It may take a few moments to get used to it, but it's pretty easy once you get there. Final thing, I just want to minimize this model view again, just to show you something that's turn on the file view again. I might just open up one of these plots. let's use the model view now in tandem with the plot. As I play the model, so I can drag this along back and forth as well. You might see there's a vertical line on the plot here. This is a plot of top tension at the effective tension at the base of the tether. So you can see that varies periodically. So if I wanted to look at where the maximum, let's say look at a local peak in tension, I can zoom in a bit on the plot. So there's a peak there at about 42 seconds. So if I just press the Alt key and the left mouse button, I can move that, and then you'll see that the viewpoint in the model view is now synchronized with the plot view. So that's also very, very useful. So I think that concludes the tutorial on the model view. You just need to play around with it a little bit yourself and see how it goes. Sorry, so I've one final thing actually I almost forgot. Another very, very useful feature is this tool called the Element Inspector. So let me just move the Element Inspector alongside the model view so we can just pop it over here. So if I zoom in on a particular element, let's say I just zoom right into the arch there and I just pick up one of these elements, I can press the Control key and then press my left mouse button to select. So once I've selected an element, you can see it appears with two little black dots there. So let's say one of the riser elements. I can probably select, if I zoom out a bit, I can select an element on the tether or so on. As soon as I've got that element selected, it presents some information here to me about the geometry of the element. So it's got the basic element properties like diameters, structural properties like bending, axial and torsional stiffness, stress properties. Also, very useful stuff like weight in air and weight in water. So the Element Inspector is very useful, particularly for complex models where there's an awful lot of different components there. It can be useful just to click on the component of interest and you can bring up the structural properties for that component. So that concludes the tutorial on the model view in Flexcom. I hope you've found it useful, and I look forward to you joining me on the next tutorial in the Flexcom tutorial series.